Sup, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing you the latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. It's currently late July, and there's really nothing going on in the NBA offseason. The Pacers did just get Louis Scola from the Phoenix Suns for Miles Plumlee and Joe Green in a draft pick, so that's good for the Pacers. They're going to strengthen that front court even more, adding Scola coming off the bench most likely for Hibbert and David West. So that's a good move on their part. But other than that, there's really nothing else going on in the offseason, especially Nets wise. Nets haven't really done anything. As you can see, I haven't done anything myself. I've just been sitting and chilling in my room, cleaning it out. Found my sunglasses, which is why I'm wearing them now because I couldn't find them for a couple months. So now that I found them, I'm excited about it, and so I'm wearing them because I feel like it. So that's why I'm wearing the sunglasses. If you asked, which you probably didn't, so that's beside the point. So anyway, this video is more about me just doing some more analysis of the general league. Today's video is the first video of the rankings of every player in their respective positions. So today is my top 5 point guards in the league. Now, this is based off of last season and what they did last season. So Derrick Rose is not going to be in my top 5. Now, I know a lot of people could argue that, saying he's a top 5 point guard, but this is all based off of last year. It's not fair for me to put him in a ranking of a top 5 point guard when he didn't play last season. It's not fair for him. It's not fair for anybody else. So this is all just based off of last season, my rankings. So Derrick Rose is not, and I repeat, not in this countdown. So if you're a Derrick Rose fan, you might as well turn off this video because you're going to be upset. So that being said, first my honorable mentions. There's 2. The first one is Drew Holiday of the former, was the 76ers, now they're with the Pelicans, which still is a name that I laugh at hysterically. Drew Holiday played for the 76ers last year, averaged 17 points a game, 8 assists, really just a solid point guard, and that's really all he was. He was the face of that team. Nothing great about him, but just a really solid point guard, so he's an honorable mention. And my other honorable mention is Rajon Rondo. Now, Rondo is definitely a guy you could argue could be in the top 5, but he missed more than half the season last year. He only played 38 games with a torn ACL, which seems to be a theme in the NBA lately. And so I feel like, once again, it's not really fair to have him really in this countdown. He averaged 13 points a game and 11 assists, so really solid. He's one of the few true pass-first point guards in the league, but he doesn't really score that much and doesn't do a lot of things other than pass the ball, and let's be honest, he shoots a high percentage, but he shoots only about 5 to 10 shots a game, so can't look too much into that. So that's why he's just an honorable mention. That, and like I said before, he hasn't played in a lot of games. So that's that. So now let's go to the actual countdown. My number 5 ranked point guard in the league is Stephen Curry of the Golden State Warriors. Now, this is a guy who can definitely be climbing up these rankings more and more. Second in point guards and scoring with 22.9, 6.9 assists, 4 rebounds, player efficiency rating of 21.34, and shot 45.3% from three-point land, which was actually higher than his field goal percentage of 45.1. Which goes to just, it's kind of funny, the fact that he actually shot a better 3 percentage than the field goal, but that's just the type of player he is. He's a scoring point guard and hands down the best shooting point guard in the league. And, that being said, though, he's number 5 because he's just really a shooter. He's not very athletic. He can make other shots other than jumpers, but that's really his game. He's just really good at it. But he doesn't make a lot of people around him better. I mean, he does to an extent. 6.9 assists, isn't that great. Well, I really want my point guard to at least be averaging, close to 8 assists a game. At least 7.5 is a good number. So that's why he's only number 5. Offensively, he's great, but defensively, we have seen him struggle on the defensive end. He's not a very good defender. So he's number 5. So really just because of his great shooting ability and his scoring ability, and we saw him in the playoffs be very clutch for the Warriors. So that is a reason that he's, though, in my top 5. So the number four is Brooklyn's own Deron Williams. Now, Deron Williams could have been a lot higher in this if he played like he did in the second half of the season the whole year. The second half of the season, he was phenomenal. You know, he actually salvaged his season. He ended up with 18.9 points, 7.7 assists, 3 rebounds, player efficiency rating of 20.38, and shot 44%, which is pretty good because coming around the All-Star break, he was like slightly under 40%. So to go from slightly under 40 to 44 is incredible. That shows you how great he was. He was also averaging only about 16 points a game by the All-Star break. And the fact that he went up almost 19 shows you that he really had such a great second half of the season. So that being said, he's number 4 because he really became the Deron Williams of old, or what people have been expecting. I know me personally, I was extremely angry with him this season until the All-Star break. You know, he just got the big contract and he was playing like you know, not terribly. I mean, I was averaging 16 points and like 7 assists, but for what the Nets were paying him, that was ridiculous. But he really came through and showed it later in the second half of the season. So he's number 4 though because the inconsistency factor. You know, he was too inconsistent last season, but he's definitely a player that can be one of the best point guards in the game, arguably. So he's number 4 though, just because of consistency. So then my number 3 point guard in the league, that would be Russell Westbrook. Now, I know a lot of people can argue that Westbrook is the best point guard in the league. He led point guards in scoring 23.2 points per game, 7.4 assists, 5.2 assists, hands down the most complete point guard statistically. 23.98 player efficiency rating, which is second among point guards. But he shot 43%, which, you know, I guess makes sense. That's how you score 23.2 points per game. Statistically, he is a guy who looks like he's a top player in the whole league. But my whole problem with him is he doesn't strike me as a real true point guard. He's a scorer, you know, and it's not his fault because he needs to score on that Thunder because it's either Durant or Westbrook. They're really the only 2 offensive weapons on that team. So he has to be scoring. He has to be shooting 43%. He has to score 23 points a game to really be an efficient player. And that's kind of my problem with him. He doesn't really make anybody else around him better. And to me, the key to your point guard is that he makes everybody else around him better. And Westbrook doesn't. You know, Westbrook doesn't help Ibaka really too much. He doesn't really help, you know, Perkins or Cephalosha or Kevin Martin when he came off the bench or anything. He doesn't really make the players around him better. And some players he might actually make worse. Like, I know a lot of people will say, you know, argued before that he made Durant worse because he took Durant's touches. So we did see that in the postseason when Westbrook went down, that the Thunder just couldn't score. So I wouldn't say he makes Durant worse, but I think there's a better player out there that could complement Durant better than Westbrook. That's just a personal opinion. However, the Thunder just can't score, though. So that's the big reason why Westbrook kind of fits on the Thunder right now. If they got a more true point guard and another type of scorer to help Durant, then it would be a better fit on the team. But that's really my knock on Westbrook. He doesn't really make anybody else around him better. He's kind of inconsistent. You know, he can score 40 points one night and give you barely 10 the next. And he's a little bit of a head case, you know, and he just kind of plays like he thinks he's better than he actually is. He's definitely a great player, but I feel like people are just kind of overhyping him a little bit. But he's still extremely good, and that's why he's number 3, but not any higher because I don't really feel he makes anybody else around them better. So now that brings me to number 2. My number 2 ranked point guard is Tony Parker. Now, Tony Parker, I mean, he had such a great year last year, and it's in the postseason, and the Spurs were great. I don't really like Tony Parker too much. There's something about him and the Spurs in general that just bore me. You know, they're one of the most boring teams to watch in the NBA. You know, they're just... Maybe it's because they're a very fundamental team, and fundamentals isn't what fans like to watch, I guess. But Tony Parker averaged 20.3 points per game, 7.6 assists, 3 rebounds, had a player efficiency rating of 23.10. But what really makes him impressive is he shot 52% from the floor, a 52% field goal percentage. For a guy who's averaging 20 points a game and being a guard, that's incredible. I mean, 52% is good for any player. You usually expect your bigs to shoot around 50%, but to have a guard shoot 52%, that shows you how great Tony Parker really is. And he really does make everything around him better, every player around him better. You know, he showed that he is the leader of the Spurs, that he's the leader of that team. He's such a crafty player when he gets to the basket, and he's made some big shots. We've seen it. And he's just, to me, you know, a really solid, great point guard, and that's why he's number 2, because he's more of the definition of a point guard. He's looking to make everyone better. He makes the right play. He shoots when he needs to. He passes when he needs to. He's a very good defender. So that's why Tony Parker, for me, is number 2. So then, my number 1 ranked point guard is, well, there's really only one more point guard left that I haven't spoken about, really, who played last season. And that, of course, is CP3, Chris Paul. Now, statistically, Paul doesn't really seem like the number 1 guard in the league. 16.9 points per game, 9.7 assists, which is very good, and 3.7 rebounds. But yeah, he led the league, led guards in player efficiency with 26.43 player efficiency ratings. Shot 48%, which is also very good, and had 2.4 steals a game. Now, 9.7 assists was actually second, I believe it was second in the league among guards. And he just really, though, is, to me, the definition of a point guard. He's a guy who really does make everyone around him better. You know, he's looking to pass first and create for his teammates, but also shows that he can score when needed. I remember there was a game against the Nets this year where he just took over a game and scored 30 points because the Clippers needed him to. And that's what he can do. And not that he needs to do that, and that's not what he's trying to do, but he can score 20 to 30 points a game if needed. But he really makes everyone else around him better, because let's be honest, DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin, those guys are not half as good as they are without Chris Paul on that team. And you also have to remember when Chris Paul played for the, at the time, New Orleans Hornets, the year before he left, they were a playoff team. They were a top 5 team in the West. And who was on that team? They didn't have David West anymore. It was just Chris Paul and a bunch of mediocre players. And that's how good Chris Paul is. He makes a bunch of mediocre players into a playoff team. And, you know, that's just what I want in my point guard. That's the point guard I want. Someone who makes everyone better, who's a true floor general, who controls the tempo of the game, who doesn't need to score but can score when asked to. And, I mean, the player efficiency rating shows it. 26.43, highest among point guards, shows that how great of a player he is. And he's a good defender. He's a great leader. To me, he's just exactly what you want on point guard. Him and Tony Parker, to me, are the only 2 true point guards in the NBA, but he is much better than Parker because he can definitely score, and he's more of a consistent player all around. And that's why, for me, Chris Paul is the number 1 point guard in the league. So there you have it. That is my top 5 point guards in the league. You know, you can argue it. I know you probably will, because a lot of those guys are interchangeable. Maybe there's some guy left off the list that you think deserves to be there. Maybe if you like John Wall or Ricky Rubio or something, or you think somebody along those lines deserves to be there. That's your opinion, but this is my top 5. So hopefully next week I should have my top 5 shooting guards in the league, but that is next week. So once again, thank you for listening. This is NetsBoy, signing off.